And what's going on? Welcome to the Movie Defenders presentation of the DCEU Underrated and Misunderstood. We are the Movie Defender podcast. I am Scott.
I am Donald.
And we are 100% of the Movie Defender podcast, a movie review podcast. We'll get into that in just a second. But basically, this video and audio podcast is to discuss the DCEU and the fact that Donald and I feel like a lot of people are missing a lot of great, awesome things about these movies that they take for granted or misunderstood, or there's a narrative about these movies that we feel is unfair. And we're gonna, if you're listening to this in the audio only, you are going to miss some things. We have video clips, we've got presentations for all of this. We got pictures, bullets, imagery. We have all kinds of things to share with you. So if you do get a chance to watch the video, I would highly recommend doing so. But you're going to be able to hear all the audio from the video clips that we play over the audio-only podcast. So if that's how you choose to consume the content, it should be fine. But I would recommend, normally we don't do that, but I would recommend everybody listening to the video portion if you get a chance. So getting into this, who the heck are we? Who do we think we are? We are a movie review podcast, and we do a couple of things differently. The first one is we'll actually play the scenes from movies that we review. And even new releases. So, for example, after Endgame dropped, a couple days later, we had a full long-form podcast discussing the film, and we played in the high teens where the scenes right out of the movie, and you got to relive it moments after you saw it. We do that fairly consistently because it's good to be reminded of what you didn't see or what you just saw or hadn't seen for a long time. When we review movies that, it's been a long time since you may have seen it. It's always good to get reminded of what's going on. And the other thing, Donald, get into this for us. We try to review things in a little bit different way.
Right. I mean, if you're out on the internet and you see anybody talking about movies, most of the time, even if they like a movie, it seems like they're going to talk about 20 things they didn't like, and that's what they do with the time they're given. We try to be, one of those that are building up rather than tearing down. We know that movies have flaws because they're made by humans, but we also know that they are put together by humans on purpose. And Scott, there's stuff that they do on purpose that maybe the audience doesn't quite realize 100% doesn't pick up on.
No, that's right. I mean, the one thing we've learned, and Donald and I have had the absolute sheer pleasure of interviewing people at Industrial Light and Magic and people who actually make these movies. And when you're looking at a single frame of film, hundreds of people touched that frame. Hundreds. There's a reason everything is on the screen that way. Now, even after you realize the reason, you still can choose to not like it. It's subjective. That's the point. It's fine. And after we're done, you may not like any of the DC movies any more than you did before. But there's a lot of things people miss, and we try to give you a different prism by which to watch the movie. That's one reason we do long form. The amount of 20-minute and under reviews of the DCEU are, well, if you want those, just do a YouTube search. You'll find them. We'd rather have a long-form discussion and dig into it a little bit. And the analogy we use is the fence analogy. If you're coming in a field and you see a fence, half the people say, well, rip the fence up. Well, okay, that'll get you past it. But the other way to do it is, well, why is the fence there? Who put it up? What's it made out of? How far does it go? What's it keeping out? What's it keeping over here? There are reasons the fence exists, and it's important to examine those before you just rip the thing out. So I think a lot of people sit, Donald, in the theater, see something and go, well, that sucks. Well, there's a reason I tend to like movies better the second, third time I see them, because I start to see the nuance. I start to understand what the director and the writers and the producers and the actors and everybody was trying to accomplish in the moment. And sometimes at first blush, I don't catch all that, if that makes some sense. But anyway, so that's who we are. You can find us anywhere on the internet. You can connect to us at Movie Defenders at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can email us at themoviedefenders@gmail.com. Just put the in front of it. But you can catch our podcast. Just do The Movie Defenders in a search, and anywhere there you see it, you'll find us. So what is this presentation all about? So basically, the DCEU is trashed in the public sphere. It just is. There is a narrative out there that Marvel's great, DC sucks. I grew up a giant DC fan. For me, DC is my Marvel. Super Friends, the 1978 Superman, the Wonder Woman TV show. I mean, I had the Incredible Hulk TV show, but as far as content, we'll get into it, DC kind of ruled it for sure. So yeah. For me, this is my jam. This is my Star Wars that I grew up with, right? Like I also grew up with Star Wars, but I mean, Donald, so these characters, nostalgically, to me, because of my age, are more important to me than the Marvel characters, and that's just the truth. But I will say this, and I think this is correct, Donald, we don't hate Marvel, right?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, we were there opening night for most of the MCU movies, especially Endgame. You know, we both put in our, you know, we do an annual award show called the Defender Awards, and we made sure that, well, I mean, we chose that Endgame was movie of the year for both of us. So, yeah, we definitely don't hate Marvel.
No, not at all. And I would say, you know, so what are we going to talk about here? So why are the DC movies the way they are? There is a clear, guys, there's a reason they did this stuff. They're not just sitting in their office going, I wonder if we do this. Like it, there's huge reasons why they did this. And we're going to get into those. The other thing that we're going to get into, like, why are people having these perceptions of the DCU that they don't have with Marvel? And then we're going to examine parts of the DC films, which are most often misunderstood, underrated. There's a narrative about them that Donald and I just think are flat false. But the other thing that I would say is, if you don't like the DCU as much as Marvel, we hope this discussion will give you things to consider when you watch them. And if you like the DCEU, maybe this will help you love it more. Now, if you're just entrenched and your heels are dug in, and your Marvel's great, DC's trash, I don't think we're going to move the needle for you, Donald. I mean, maybe we will. We've actually had people reach out to us in our podcast often that say we have completely changed their perspective on movies, and we've turned ones that people said sucked into ones that they love. So, I don't know. We could get lucky, yeah?
Never say never, right?
Yeah, never say never. All right. So, Donald, I think the first thing to do is a very, very brief history lesson. So, I know, right? So we're going to do this brief history of comic book movies because this is important. We're starting with why DC get this way. Why do the movies look the way they do? Why do they act the way they do? And DC used to rule the comic book world as far as movies and television content went. So not only that, cartoons. The X-Men cartoon in the 90s is the exception of Marvel, and the Incredible Hulk show, and the really bad Spider-Man.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which, you know, that was awesome. Staple for me.
Hey, man, don't be dissing Miss Lion. I'm in. But no, and also the Spider-Man had a really shitty 70s TV show that was pretty bad. But
there was even a Captain America.
There was. But as you guys can see on the screen, for 30 years, DC, for 40 years, DC has ruled everything. It started in the 70s, and I know that the Incredible Hulk was there, but that's an outlier. It just is. It's an outlier. But from TV, film, cartoons, DC was everywhere, and Marvel was the silent one. It was only until about 2000 that X-Men and Spider-Man got licensed out, and Sam Raimi made the Spider-Man trilogy. And the X-Men movies started with Bryan Singer started to come up, but that was it. And until then, DC ruled this world, and they didn't have a lot of competition. Now, so how did we go from there to Marvel's amazing and DC sucks? Marvel movies right now, no matter what they do, the critics give them a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's and the 10% that don't like superhero movies. And they're just trying to be shitty about pop culture generally. Right. Yeah. I mean, am I wrong? Or
no, that's exactly what it is. You know, you get people that are like, you get Oscar, you know, Academy members that are like, I will never vote for a Best Picture comic book movie ever.
Right.
Just because
it is because there's people in tights running around shooting bad guys. And then DC, with the exception of Wonder Woman and Shazam, they're getting trashed. It doesn't matter what the public reception is, they're getting trashed. I didn't put it in here, Donald, but I did find this really interesting graph of DC movies and the plotted differences between the fan score and the critic score. And it was a wide gap. I mean, you would see the fan scores anywhere between 60 and 90, and critic scores anywhere between 20 and 60. And it was a wide chasm. Anyway, interesting. So how did we get here? So here's the deal, and we're going to get to the movies. Like the DC movies, up until the late 2000s were up for Oscars. And we went from that to You Blow in a movie, 2 movies, kind of 2 movies, 1.5. But anyway, it's here's the thing, and this is one of our thesis statements, I guess, Donald, is DC didn't change. I think that's what we're going to start to talk about here, Donald, is that DC did not change their formula, but everything else around them changed, and it changed on them overnight. And we'll get into it. But is that fair? Is that kind of what you're feeling? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and as well, and frankly, it's not fair because they didn't. They were here first. They were doing everything right, and then stuff changed on them, and they held their ground for a little bit, and we'll talk about what happened when they decided not to hold their ground. But
right. Absolutely. So let's do a little bit of a history lesson. So let's go back to 2008. This is when DC is literally on top of the world, and The Dark Knight drops, and Heath Ledger wins an Oscar. It's up for, was it up for Best Picture? It was. It didn't win though, right? I think that's correct.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think The Dark Knight was up. Was it up for Best Picture?
Yeah, it was up.
Okay. All right. So did not win. Now, Marvel Studios took a big gamble and made a really low budget Iron Man movie. I mean, in comparison to what DC was doing, low budget, and as well dropped The Incredible Hulk. Now, The Incredible Hulk was put out by Universal, but it was part of the MCU. Marvel was deeply involved in it. They connected it with those end scenes. All that stuff's true. If Iron Man doesn't work, and I think Robert Downey Jr. did that thing for $300,000 or $100,000 or something like that. If that doesn't work, it didn't work. They only had enough money to make one movie, and if it didn't make money, Marvel Studios never becomes a thing. But at the same time, DC can't get any higher. Like, they're on the stage at the Oscars talking about the DC movies. Does that make any sense? So, anyway, at the time, everyone loved The Dark Knight, and to this day, you ask people what the greatest superhero movie is of all time, and you still will get a I mean, Endgame seems to be the popular recent choice, but The Dark Knight's still, go.
Yeah, you get Civil War and you get Winter Soldier, but yeah, Dark Knight is definitely right up there at the top of a lot of people's lists. So.
Right, and it should be. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So what happened in the 3 years between 2008 and 2012? DC kind of didn't do anything besides the Dark Knight trilogy, and Chris Nolan was taking 4 to 5 years between films. He was taking a long time. The only movie that came out that was really any DC property of any consequence was The Watchmen. Now, Zack Snyder did this. It didn't blow up the box office, but he got some real critical acclaim for the movie. Whether or not you personally like that movie, and I know some real diehards of the old Watchmen graphic novel feel like he took too many liberties, and all that stuff's true. But a lot of people considered it a really good movie. But in the meantime, the MCU was born. And they decided that they made enough money and they're going to try to get to Avengers. Because it wasn't guaranteed at that point. All we had was Iron Man, Hulk, and Iron Man 2, and then Thor and Cap. But we didn't... I mean, they were going to get to the Avengers, but you know what I mean? Like, they were still experimenting, but still.
Yeah, they were building, and they weren't sure whether it was going to work out. Whether anybody would buy, watching multiple movies from different, with different headliners even, that would all center, and kind of congregate into one of these enormous movies, a team-up movie, like the Avengers. So
right.
It wasn't a thing yet.
Well, and Zack Snyder was coming off 300 and Dawn of the Dead, which was getting him a lot of run. And so, and look, those movies don't have to be your cup of tea. But I mean, they were popular, they made money, they got a lot of plays. So here's what started to change, is what people thought superhero movies should look like. And that's one of our big thesis statements. And then you get to 2012. And this is the year I think things shifted significantly. So The Dark Knight Rises ends the Dark Knight trilogy. It is really well received, well done, slightly reviewed less than The Dark Knight, but my God, when you've got Heath Ledger winning Best Actor or Supporting Actor, whatever, it's going to be hard to clear that mountain again. But it was a really good ending to that trilogy. But it's hard to crest that hill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it came out right after the Avengers, which was probably as much, if not more, anticipated by the audiences at that point.
Right. So in between Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy being really the only thing other than Watchmen that DC's putting out, and remember, they're all being well reviewed. Everything. Watchmen well reviewed, well talked about for the most part, and then the Dark Knight trilogy lauded. I mean, everyone's like, that fucking thing's great. So here's the deal. The Avengers comes out and caps off phase 1 of the MCU, of what we now know as the MCU. It was a grand slam home run. Joss Whedon did awesome. This movie is great. It's fantastic. We love it. It's great. But audiences were starting to learn that these Marvel films, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to look like. Meanwhile, over here, Chris Nolan's finishing out his vision, and DC's going, hey, this is great. We're making money hand over fist, and people like our stuff, right? Like, these two things are existing at the same time.
Yeah, and they're not even stepping on top of each other, really. I mean, they're just doing their thing, and you would think that they would be able to both exist in the comic book space doing that. You know that Marvel's got the lighter stuff, and DC's got the darker stuff, and a lot of people were fine with that, I think. No,
absolutely, and it's not. And we're going to get into the light versus dark thing a lot.
Sure,
but anyway, so DC says, all right, it's time. It's time we do our thing. So they want their MCU. They want their version of the MCU. They go, all right, the Dark Knight trilogy did great. We're seeing what Marvel's doing over here. We've got a huge cast of characters. One studio owns all the content. They don't have the problem that up until 2019, Marvel had, which Marvel didn't have rights to Spider-Man. They still don't. They didn't have rights to the X-Men. They didn't have rights to the Fantastic Four. They didn't have the rights to a lot of their premier A-list property. And they had to start mining the tier underneath, right? With the Avengers and Iron Man and Captain America. Now they're on top of the world. But at the time, they weren't. But DC never had that problem because they sold everything to one studio. So you can do all you want, no matter what. So Donald, I mean, when you're like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, aren't they going to do what just worked a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
So, Donald, okay. So, what just worked? Well, Zack Snyder just worked, and everyone loved this stuff, and everyone loved Nolan's vision, and blah blah blah. So, why grab Zack Snyder? Well, we talked about it all already. He was getting critical acclaim for the movies he was putting out. Well reviewed, not blowing up the box office like Endgame or anything, but still good. Snyder is a comic nerd, especially DC. Like he grew up on it. He's a fanboy, and he knows a ton about it. And also, and Donald will talk about this, but I mean, Chris Nolan could do no wrong. And he shortly thereafter was Inception right after or before that. Was Inception before? I can't remember. But anyway, he's on top of the world, and Tenet's about to come out. Everyone's clamoring for that thing, and I can't wait. He's on top of the world, and everyone's like, ooh, do more of that. Or at least that's what everyone thought they were saying, correct?
Well, that's what DC thought everyone was saying, because that's what the box office was saying, was we want more like the Dark Knight trilogy. And you've got a director coming in. Nolan was on doing his own thing. He's like, I did my trilogy. You're lucky that I got that done, but I'll stay around to produce and do some writing. But you need to find a new director. And I think Snyder basically, was chomping at the bit to say, no, I need to be the guy to do this. I have a vision. I have a love for the source material. Let's do this.
Right. And there's another thing, Donald, and we're gonna talk about it a lot, but Nolan and Snyder's visual styles are pretty close. In fact, I don't know, Donald, talk about this. If you're watching the video, we've got imagery up showing the similarities between their styles, and honestly, it's really, Donald, it's hard for me visually to tell much difference.
There's a definite.
But
there's a difference, but there's not a huge difference, and there's definitely they're in the same family, I would say, with the look and feel, especially Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. That's very similar to a lot of what we had already seen from Snyder.
No, you're right. And that lends to, we're going to get into the it's too dark. We're going to get into that. But this is the origin of it, right? Like, hey, you just said more of this and you threw this at the Oscars. Okay, here's more. So we're just saying, y'all said you wanted this, but meanwhile, Marvel's out there doing what they're doing. And I think that's the big thing. But we got Zack Snyder to direct, right? Okay, that's cool. Well, who else are we going to bring in to do the DCEU? Well, we obviously said we got Zack Snyder, right? Well, then we're going to grab David Goyer and Chris Nolan, who literally gave you the Dark Knight trilogy to write it and produce it and make it. I mean, they literally grabbed everybody that did the Dark Knight trilogy and just put a new director in front of it, which was a real similar style. It got along with them great, and said, here, you said you loved this, so more. Correct?
Yeah. So at the same time, then, we're getting, we're getting everything that we expect out of the DCEU at this point, or to go into the DCEU. So DC is doing everything right at this point, right?
Right. And I think what you and I were just trying to articulate is there are huge reasons they did this. They didn't just sit in a boardroom going, let's depress the crap out of everybody. No, they were listening to you. They were listening to everybody that said they liked this stuff. They liked the style. They liked the grit. They liked the dark. They liked the realism. We'll get into that. But they just learned for what had worked for a better part of a decade.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, there was kind of and Donald, track me here. 1978 Superman, and we're going to have to talk about it a lot. The 1978 Superman, bright, shiny, Boy Scout, truth, justice, the American way. In the 2000s, people wanted more realism. The X-Men is not a chipper film. I mean, the X-Men films, they're not chipper. The Blade movies, they're not chipper. So even Marvel was doing those kinds of movies. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and the Dark Knight trilogy was eating all their lunches for the most part. So,
right. So Donald, let's talk a little bit about what makes the DCEU different from what Marvel's doing, because there are some fundamental differences that they made a decision to do things slightly differently. Talk about this a little bit first, but the first one, Donald, the big one is we say realism, but I want to put realism in quotation marks because look, it's a superhero movie. Okay.
All right.
So a guy that crashes to Earth in a spaceship and he happens to speak English. Well, actually he was a kid, but you get what I'm saying. Like Zod just spoke English when he got to Earth.
Right.
Look, we get it. There's some suspension of disbelief here, but talk a little bit about what DC's doing a little bit differently than Marvel does, because they don't hand wave some of the realism they try to bake in.
Yeah, well, they need to, and I think they got this. We don't have a slide for it, but I think they got this out of things like Lois and Clark and Smallville on TV, where they were getting, they had to live in these worlds, and they had to flesh everything out, and so you had to have a world that felt real, and not everything is pastel primary colors. You're going to have stuff that, people don't understand. What are people's actual reactions going to be to a guy who can fly and has super strength and can shoot lasers out of his eyes, right? What would be the world's reaction, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, and we'll talk about the differences of the last Superman that they tried. But yeah, I mean, look, okay. We're recording this in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, so let's not pretend like the world doesn't panic about things for 2 seconds, okay? I'm not saying it's not worth panicking over. I'm just saying it's what we do.
They wouldn't just be celebrating and flag waving, some literal alien showing up in their midst, right?
Right. And secondly, who would put an S on his chest, call himself Superman, and fly around? So if you remember in the 1978 version, he throws the crystal, up comes the Fortress of Solitude, he talks to Dad, talks to Marlon Brando, and literally he flies out of the Fortress of Solitude in the suit. You don't see how he got the suit. You don't see why the suit looks the way it does. Why is that an S? Why did he name himself freaking Superman? These are the things that DC took the trouble to explain to you. And didn't just hand wave it. Now, when I was a kid and I saw it, I didn't care. I was like, whatever, look, Superman, I get it. Unless it, does that make sense? I wasn't worried about it. It was just...
Yeah, but that's not what audiences are in for at this point.
Right. Audiences are much more sophisticated these days. You can't have Superman breaking up a bank robber, getting hit on the head with a crowbar, turning around saying bad vibrations. Like, you can't do that today. I love that movie, but you can't do it today. And then why is Batman the way he is? Like, all these things, they started to make it, they tried to bake in some realism. Okay. Even the kryptonite is more of an, the kryptonite was explained, the atmosphere, it's not just the sun, it's all these other things. They tried to explain it. But here's the other thing is that, and Donald and I are pretty adamant about this one. Marvel will not put their characters in certain situations. So DC will show you how a hero's moral compass was forged. They're going to put those characters in really crappy situations and watch them grow. And the versions of the characters that you want and wanted are coming, have gotten here. So Donald, let me set this up and see if you agree. Okay. We're going to talk about Superman at the end of Man of Steel and his decision, he had to choose killing the last of his kind or saving what in the moment was one family, but was probably going to be all of humanity, right? While Captain America had something bad happen to him when he dropped Bucky, he wasn't forced to choose between Bucky and a family member or a family of kids, or like, do you know what I mean? He wasn't forced to make an awful lose-lose choice.
Well, and he also, he had also already arrived. Steve Rogers was a hero before he got the super serum.
100%.
So that's,
yes. He was a hero when it started. He got a serum to make him better, and he was a hero when it ended. And I love me some Captain America, dude. Oh, yeah. He's my favorite character in Marvel, period, even when I was reading comics. So I'm not dogging it. I'm just saying that Marvel doesn't do that to their characters. Now, what that does for the audience is that now they have to watch this awful, horrific situation. And in Batman versus Superman, like, we're going to watch buildings topple on people and you deal with it. Now, that is one of the things that Marvel in Civil War did address. But, we're going to talk about that because we feel like there's some real hypocrisy there with how that was received. But I guess, Donald, and jump in. I just feel like, and DC does this in their comics as well. They always have historically done that in their comics, where they are going to show you what forged their hearts and their souls. They're not just going to assume that they're there and away we go. I would say in the MCU, Tony Stark obviously got to grow. He got to see what the weapons he was building were doing to people, and he got to change. He got to grow. We'll talk about that. But I don't know, Donald. I just feel like DC puts their characters in situations which are more meaningful to their moral compass than Marvel will ever do. Marvel is never going to put a gun in Steve Rogers' hand and make him pick. He's just not, they're never going to do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, the most we get is him choosing Bucky or Tony, basically. And it's not a huge surprise that he chooses Bucky in that situation. So,
right. Well, here's the next thing, Don. So talk about this. DC's also got another problem. And that is, you've seen these guys before.
Right. Yeah. When Iron Man came around, I had no freaking clue. I knew it was a dude in a suit, right? And I think he flies. I didn't know who Tony Stark was. I didn't know who Pepper Potts was. Didn't know anything about any of that. Same with everything. I was not big on the comics, and so I didn't know who. I mean, I knew the Incredible Hulk from that TV show, and that was it. Until the movies, and yet before the DCEU, we had a huge backlog of movies and TV shows and cartoons that we could draw off of. That we had specific expectations for what we were going to see next out of these characters.
Absolutely, and the reason they were forced to do this is they had licensed off the characters that everyone did know.
Marvel did.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Marvel had licensed off X-Men and Spider-Man, so they had to do something with somebody, and they had, okay, well, how about the Avengers?
That's right. And so you didn't have these built up expectations of what are you supposed to look like, how are you supposed to act. Like we're not really going to touch on it too much in this this presentation, but Jared Leto's Joker in Suicide Squad is widely crapped on. Well, I contend, had Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson never done it, and it was the first time the Joker was ever on scene, no one has a problem with it. I mean, I could be wrong, but look, you can see on the screen here all these different versions of these characters that they had to retread. And they had to retread it because they've been doing it for 30, 40 years. So they were stuck with hashtag not my Superman. What, you made him a hobo? Well, we'll get into it. Had these other previous versions of this never happened, I don't think this happens. And so you can either use versions you already had, or do a different take or a different version of what we've already seen. So if they just do a Batman that's similar to Chris Nolan's version or similar to Tim Burton's version, we have been there, we have seen it, we got the t-shirt. They have to choose. Give them the familiar, or do something different that you've never seen before, a different take on a character that's based on real comic material, and go from there. So I guess, Donald, what I'm saying is I understand the decision, and I understand why a lot of people are like, I don't recognize my Batman, I haven't seen him, what's he doing? I get it, well, but I also get the dilemma.
Correct. And DC even had, very recent evidence of this as well. They went with, Superman Returns with Brandon Routh, and it was literally the Richard Donner, the Christopher Reeve Superman. It was a direct sequel, down to the music, right? The John Williams score. And I loved it. It was great, but a lot of people didn't like it because it was not, it just didn't fit in the current time, like what we were talking about with the more sophisticated audiences. They wanted to see something different. And so then Batman Begins comes around, and we see a different Batman than we saw in the earlier Batman movies from the 80s and 90s. And so DC is going to say, oh, well, we could give them more of the same or something different. And the audiences are telling us loud and clear they want something different.
Nope, 100%. 100%. So there's the history lesson. So let's get into this. So we're going to look at all the biggest misunderstandings and underrated parts of the DCEU. And Donald, I think that it's important to start with the biggest one, the one that everybody parrots. If you go, hey, what do you think of the DCEU? I guarantee you someone blurts out, it's too dark. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's like an input-output computer program. You push this button and this thing spits out. And you ask people, what do you think of it? Oh, it's too dark. And is it darker than Marvel? Yeah. Now, I would claim that Endgame's not a walk in the damn park. That thing's depressing as all hell.
Right.
However, I get it, and we'll talk about it. So, I mean, anyway, it's I can't find criticisms of the DCEU without seeing this argument. Is that fair?
It's always the starting point, I think.
I agree. So let's examine if it's too dark. So, Donald, can you think of another series of, say, superhero movies that were really dark, seriously depressing, gritty, not a single happy thing happened in them, and everyone, can you think of one that might have recently happened that everybody said was like amazing?
I think we've mentioned it before.
Yeah. Okay. The Dark Knight trilogy, there is not a happy moment in 3 films in 7 hours of content until they're sitting in a cafe in Italy winking at Alfred. There's not a happy moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's some funny parts, but with the Joker and whatnot, but that's not, and there's some characters you love like Lucius, but that's not the same thing.
Right.
It's not. You're not laughing at when you go to the Dark Knight trilogy movies, right?
No, right. So my point, guys, to everyone watching this, y'all said you loved this, and so DC said, "Cool, here's more." And instead of going, "Oh, this is great," Marvel has snuck in the back door and gone, yeah, but this is what they look like. And everyone loved the Marvel movies. I love the Marvel movies. I just don't understand why there can't be 2 worlds that are opposed or just don't look like each other, don't act like each other. The DC universe doesn't act like the Marvel universe, and I don't know why that's not okay. I guess. And so when everyone's like complaining it was too dark, I was surprised because I was like, dude, I just saw The Dark Knight and they did blow up Rachel. I saw it.
Yeah.
And they ruined Harvey and they killed everybody and blew up a hospital. And
I mean, what else did I expect, right?
I know. They broke Batman's back, like right in front of you. Anyway. So, okay. And then here's the other kicker, Donald, is since then, they heard you loud and clear, folks. They're not that dark. I mean, you've got Wonder Woman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, the Suicide Squad stuff, Aquaman. I would not categorize any of those movies as dark. Suicide Squad flirts with it because they're criminals, but that was not dark. They were cracking jokes and giving people shit all movie long. That didn't scream dismal to me. What about you?
Yeah, in comparison, for sure, it's heading toward the lighter side. A lot of people didn't. I think a lot of people that say that Suicide Squad was dark didn't really watch it, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, guys, what we're saying, look, we're going to get into the dark thing. There's not much else to say with this dark thing. It's like, one, they started to do what you all said you loved, and they gave you more of it with a director and writers that did the other one. And everyone, oh, it's too dark. Well, 5 minutes ago, it wasn't too dark, and everybody was fine with it. So yeah.
We're going to talk about it a little bit later, too, and this isn't all about Marvel, but the MCU ends up starting to go darker and darker as well as things go. And so the DCEU simply started darker, and they're starting to move lighter.
Well, if they do Mahershala Ali's Blade, buckle up, folks. They're not going to be Blade doesn't crack jokes. He's not Tony Stark. he's not. So anyway, no, you're right. You're totally right. So Donald, let's do this. Let's do some movie by movie discussion here, and let's start with what started the entire DCEU off, and that's Man of Steel. So this is 2013's Man of Steel. Let me. I wish I could really ask the people watching the video if they liked Man of Steel. It got good reviews. It got better fan reviews than it did critic reviews, but the critic reviews were around 70, I think just south of 70 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think the fan score was higher. I need to look to be sure, but it wasn't like just shit on like it was. But I want to tell you my Man of Steel experience, and then I'd like you to share yours.
Sure.
Mine's pretty simple. This is my ultra hero. This is him. When I was born, Superman 1978, along with Star Wars, was on top of the world. And I grew up with Christopher Reeve in his red underwear. I did. And I grew up with Super Friends and the Superman cartoon in the 90s and 2000s, the Justice League and versus the Legion of Doom. This is my jam. And so when they said Superman's going to get a modern treatment, and the guy who just did Watchmen and 300 is going to do it, and the guy who did the Dark Knight trilogies that Goyer and Nolan are writing it, I'm so in. I was so excited for this. I could not wait. You and I went opening night, but I was just over the moon. And I saw that initial trailer, hearing Russell Crowe, you will give the people of Earth, an ideal to strive for. They will stumble, they will fall, but they will meet you in the sun. I'm in near tears. I just couldn't believe it. I loved it. And when I saw the movie, and I will say this now while we're staring at this visual. And I understand that a lot of people listening to this and watching this video are going to think I am insane. I think this is one of the best superhero movies that's been done, period. I don't know where it ranks. I'm not trying to compare it to things like Infinity War. I'm just saying I can hold this up against any other one I've watched, and I think it's just pretty amazing. Donald, what about you and your experience with Man of Steel?
Yeah, I can echo pretty much everything you were just saying. But coming into this particular movie, for whatever reason, I was coming at it as, oh, we just got Brandon Routh in Superman Returns, and we're going to go back and get an origin story for Superman and, move on from there. And I'm thinking, oh, great. More, more of the Superman that I know and love. And honestly, coming out of it, I mean, I enjoyed the movie the first time, but it was definitely a shock to my system. And I think a lot of people probably felt that as well. But that said, the last time that I watched it here, maybe it's because I've seen so many more movies since then, and I've seen all of the MCU up through Endgame, and bawled my eyes out, and seen some tougher moments in the other superhero movies. Now as I'm coming back to Man of Steel, I loved every bit of it, and man, I want to go back to myself right before I saw this and say, don't, just forget about everything. Think Batman Begins, but for Superman, and you're going to be okay. And that's
a good way to put it.
That's what it was, basically.
That's good. And here's one thing I want you guys to remember as we discuss Man of Steel. Guys, it's an origin story, but it's an origin story for the DCEU. And this is to set up and lay the groundwork for who and what he's going to be. There was a lot of hashtag not my Superman. Well, guys, that's not saying he's going to be like this forever. He's not going to not grow over the course of movies. And Donald referred to it earlier. Like, he didn't have any preconceived notions of what Tony Stark was supposed to be. So he isn't going, well, that's not my Tony Stark. It's not the one in the cartoon when I grew up as a kid. Harumph. So why is Tony Stark allowed to grow and Superman isn't? So I guess this is my point, is that it's a starting point, not an end point. So don't worry about it. This is the DCEU's Iron Man, and it's Tony. We'll talk about it later, but Tony Stark by Endgame is a shell of the guy we saw in 2008's Iron Man. Like, that guy's nearly gone. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
if you're waiting for truth, justice, and the American way, and you're gonna get there, but you gotta wait. Because you're going to have to give him time to grow the character. But let's get into that for a minute. So we can't see through cameras, but I assume if I asked everybody watching this video, show of hands, who thinks this is their Superman, or the vision or the version of Superman that they equate when they think of Superman, I would assume 75% of the people would say yes, that Richard Donner's version of Superman with Christopher Reeve in his red underwear serves as their template for what this is supposed to be, who he is supposed to be. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, people over the age of 20, I would say, and probably a fair amount of the others as well, because it's with the curl on the hairline and the blue eyes and the bright red cape, and I mean the spandex. It's classic, right?
Oh, it's awesome, and I will never stop adoring this version of Superman. It set the groundwork for my love of the character, so I am not throwing any shade at this. It's awesome. However, the version that he's an overgrown Boy Scout. He was always right. He always knew what to do. He had a perfect moral compass immediately. From the second he put on the red suit and flew out of the Fortress of Solitude, and again, we don't know why, but he did. He was perfect in that way. The entire world, this is the biggie, right? Like, the whole world embraces him without question. He walks it in the Superman 4, and I don't want to talk about the quality of Quest for Peace. However, he walks into the UN like, what's up, y'all? I'm Superman. I'm going to tell you what's up. Do you know what I mean? And everyone's like, cool, Soup's here. Like, nobody's like, what's he doing? It's an alien. Everyone's like, it's cool, whatever. It's all bright and shiny, and there are no dark themes in it at all. So with what they're about to do with Man of Steel, it's flying in the face of this stuff pretty vehemently. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, I mean, the darkest it gets is, the death of Lois Lane, but then they rewind that literally
30 seconds
at the very
later.
End. Spoiler alert.
She was dead for 30 seconds.
Yeah. And it was a sad moment, and then it was over, and she was all better. And it's you can undo really bad things. Bad things can happen, but Superman's there, so it's all right.
You just fly backwards. We're good. Now, here's the thing, and this is the thing Donald and I want to stress, and that is, combine this with the fact that The Dark Knight trilogy, everyone said, amazing, Oscar worthy. And then you combine that with the fact, this is not the Superman from the comics. Okay, I grew up reading Superman comics as well. And I can tell you, especially starting in the 90s, not even the New 52, just the 90s, that version of Superman does not exist. Richard Donner's version of Superman in the comics is not, he's not like that. And just for some shits and giggles here, I just wanted to go through some real dark moments of Superman's life in the comics. Not because I think these would make great movies, just to prove a point. Superman's done some things. First, he's let his best friend's son get kidnapped by aliens. He paralyzed a man just to steal his identity for a minute. And this is going back way past the 90s. Like, this goes back decades. He buried people alive once. He abandoned Earth. He has more than once. He beat Green Arrow to death in one series. He burned Batman alive once. And then my favorite, he got Lois pregnant, which ended up killing her. And then at her funeral, on her grave, he made out with another woman. And I showed you that picture.
Yeah, that
I showed it to you.
I wouldn't have believed you if you hadn't shown me.
It's so true. And then recently, because we got to be recent, Donald. He recently outed Batman's identity on Twitter.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, Twitter's even in comics these days.
That's the unforgivable sin right there.
Right? He tweeted Batman is Bruce Wayne. Tweet. And with Superman's followers, I'm sure he has more than Kim Kardashian, or at least maybe a little less. But you know, he let everyone know who he was. So look, okay. I'm not saying those would make good Superman movies. I'm saying when you combine comic material, that the Superman is not the overgrown Boy Scout, with the Dark Knight trilogy, and you're putting these together going, we're going to get real comic sources and real comic stories and how he is and who he is and how he learned to be who he is, and we're going to combine that with the Dark Knight trilogy, you can get a version of Man of Steel that makes total sense. So that's why. I think the whys are what Donald and I try to examine the most, and that's a big why. So anyway, let's get into another big complaint. So Donald, another big complaint of Man of Steel, the second one after It's Too Dark, I hear there's too much destruction. Yeah,
that it's basically destruction porn, right? And I fell into this as well for a while.
Right. So, okay, let's talk about this a little bit. Especially, and everyone's really complaining about the battle in Metropolis with Zod and his folks and the World Engine and the ship and all that stuff. But we're not going to show this one to you, but I want you to watch next time. There's a few things to watch for. First, Zod does most of it. The ship that crashed causes a huge slug of it. Now, Superman crashed the ship, but if he doesn't crash the ship, the world's going to die. So, sorry, ship crashes, right? Secondly is the World Engine that Zod's trying to terraform Earth did a huge slug of that. That was not Superman. That's a guy hell-bent on destroying things. Where Endgame fought their final battle, Thanos didn't seem to give a shit to save the birdies in the trees nearby. I mean, that was scorched earth. You know what I'm saying? So,
but
anyway.
They avoided it by having it in a big old valley with, you know, with not lots of collateral damage to be seen.
That's correct. And that's, honestly, I think the storytellers were trying to just leave that out of it. It needs to be about the heroes. But you're right, yeah. They didn't make it about that. Now, Civil War did, but we'll get into that. The other thing is Superman keeps trying to pull Zod out, and he keeps pulling him up, and Zod keeps going back down because he understands this is his weakness. And even in Superman 2, that Richard Lester did, and Richard Donner also did his version, but in both versions, Zod figures out his love for humanity is his weakness. I'm going to use this against me. In fact, Zod says that if you he chastises him, like, I'm going to take these people from you. This is your weakness. So there's that. The other thing is this is deliberate, and it sets up storylines in Batman versus Superman and Justice League in the same vein Civil War did. So it was a purposeful plot point. Yeah, when two guys that can't be destroyed throw down like this, shit's going to get destroyed. But then also, I think the other thing we're trying to say is, anyone better remember the Battle of New York? And DC with the Triskelion and Sokovia and Germany. And I mean, Marvel had an entire film based around the consequences of too much destruction. So I don't understand giving this crap, because buildings toppled over and anyway, I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right, and I think you know, if you haven't seen Man of Steel since you've seen Civil War, you need to go back and rewatch it because you're not gonna see it the same way. I sure didn't, and you know, when we are talking about the genocide of all humans on Earth, which is what Zod was talking about, he was terraforming it so that it was not going to be like Earth anymore. It was not going to be hospitable to humans. They were all going to die, and he didn't care. Those are the highest stakes there are, really. And so you're going to end up, in order to translate that to something that people can understand, you're going to see a lot of destruction and terrible things. But, you know, the other thing that you get out of something like that is you get in Man of Steel, people like, you know, Perry White going and rescuing people from the Daily Planet, you know, out of the rubble and everything. And, you know, you see a lot of heroism out of it. It's all for a reason.
100%. Yeah. Perry's willing to die for Jenny. In fact, they look at each other before Superman shuts down the world engine on the other side of the world and stops it. They have a moment, they lock eyes, the gravity thing's about to hit them, and they have a moment, they look at each other, they're going to die, and they understand that, and he's willing to do it to save her. You're right, it misses that. And here's the other thing. I want to read this quote from Zack Snyder. We don't have it on the screen, but there was a lesson here Superman had to learn. Captain America had to learn it. Tony Stark had to learn it. Soup had to learn it. And Zack Snyder said, quote, I was surprised, what he was surprised at was the backlash of the destruction in the movie. He said, I was surprised because that's the thesis of Superman for me, that you just can't have superheroes knock around and there be no consequences. Guys, there's too much destruction. Right. Yes. The director agrees with you. And they were trying to remedy it as part of the story plot. Like, it's not a dig on the movie. It's part of the narrative and the growth of the characters. And if you're going to get mad about it, you're not giving them a chance. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and you know, I mean, what's happening here is back to believability. This is real. You know, I mean, it is uncomfortable to see people on the screen running from falling buildings like 9/11. I mean, it's disturbing, but that's the whole point. Is it's taking you on that journey as well. And so once Superman is able to, you know, resolve that threat, then you feel relieved. You're supposed to, right?
Right. So, Donald, would you concur that The Incredibles is one of the best superhero movies that's been made?
Oh, I've said it before, yeah.
Okay, what's it about?
It's about the consequences of superheroes doing their thing and not paying attention to what happens around them, right? So,
thank you. Enough said.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just, you know. All right, let's get to the next thing that people say about Man of Steel. Okay, this one I hated from the moment it happened, but everyone said it. I heard it parroted like people's, you know, I just heard it spouted out all the time, and that is, his dad said it was okay to kill kids. All right. You know, I heard, you know, hobo Superman. Oh, he's a hobo. Okay. Look, they're doing on the hobo Superman thing. We don't have a slide for it, but it's real quick. They know they're doing an origin story, but they know you know the origin. So the idea is that in his travels, he's going to think back about the moments that shaped him. So you're getting bits and pieces of how he grew up to inform the man he's become, and then we're good. We don't need to show you the ship crashing and Martha and Jonathan Kent finding him in the field. We don't have to do that. You know that happened. So that was a narrative decision to tell the story of how he got to be the way he is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and if I had to guess, I would guess that's Christopher Nolan right there.
Probably so.
He likes the flashbacks and whatnot.
Well, Donald,
and it's genius. Yeah.
No, I agree. So, Donald, I want you to, if you could set this up for us here, for people who think that Jonathan Kent gave his kid really crappy life lessons, set this up for us. What are we about to watch?
Yeah, so this is the aftermath in 1978 Superman, where Clark was just showing off racing a train, and he raced the truck full of his high school classmates back to his farm, and you know, they said, "How'd you get here so fast?" And he said, "I ran," and and then we see this scene here. So.
Right, and this is important. What we want you to do is listen to what Jonathan Kent tells Clark about what he just did, because we're going to show the Man of Steel version, and it's important. So everybody, let's listen to this right here. If you're watching, let's watch this scene.
I didn't mean to show off, Pa. It's just that guys like that Brad, I just want to tear him apart.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know I shouldn't.
Yeah, I know. You can do all these amazing things, and sometimes you think that you will just go bust unless you can tell people about it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, every time I get the football, I can make a touchdown.
That's for sure.
Every time.
Yeah.
I mean, is it showing off and somebody's doing the things he's capable of doing? Is a bird showing off when it flies?
No. No, now you listen to me. When you first came to us, we thought that people would come and take you away because when they found out, the things you could do, and that worried us a lot. But then a man gets older and he thinks very differently and things get very clear. And there's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason. I don't know whose reason, whatever the reason is, maybe it's because, I don't know, but I do know one thing. It's not to score touchdowns. Huh?
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. All right, do it. Yeah.
You will.
Come on.
All right, so Donald, what's important there? Here's what's important. What just happened, what Clark just did, if you get seen doing this, if you are not ready, and I don't mean physically, because nothing can hurt you, but if you are not mentally ready, and if the world is not ready, whatever you are here for, and I don't know what that is ruined. And you are going to have to be very careful, because I know you want to play football and you want to show off in front of your friends, but that's going to screw up whatever reason there is for you being here. Is that what you get from it?
Yeah. And, that his time has not yet come, right? I mean, that's something that, I think is done with Superman a lot is comparisons to Jesus and in Man of Steel, it's definitely very much a lot of Christ-like sort of imagery, right? And this is one of them that is, hey, it's not your time yet, so don't reveal your powers just yet. And so that's all it is, really. And use some, even if it is important, it's not as important as what you're gonna have to do at some point. And so just you need to exercise judgment. And in this scene in this movie, it's a very flippant, right, immature sort of a reason why he's wanting to reveal himself. But we ramp up, if we're going to talk about the next clip, we're going to ramp up the stakes and the realism and the moral quandary about it. Is showing off to your friends more important than whatever it is that you're here for the reason? But let's hear about this thing from Man of Steel, this other scene, which is real similar, right?
Yeah, no, it is. In fact, we're just going to play this right here. This is important. I want everybody to pay attention to what Jonathan Kent is telling Clark. And again, it's what Donald was saying. Well, anyway, just listen, and I want you to compare it as you're listening to what you just saw and heard. So let's play it right here.
He was in the bus. He saw what Clark did.
I know he did. I'm sure what he thought he saw
was an act of God, Jonathan. This was providence.
You also get the reaction people have to it.
Well, I think you're blowing it a little out of proportion.
No, I'm not. Lana saw it too, and the Fordham boy. And this isn't the first time Clark's done something like this.
Sorry, folks, that's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to help.
I know you did, but we talked about this. Right? Right? We talked about this. You have... Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe. There's more at stake here than just our lives, Clark, or the lives of those around us. When the world finds out what you can do, it's going to change everything. Our beliefs, our notions of what it means to be human, everything. You saw how Pete's mom reacted, right? She was scared, Clark.
Why?
People are afraid of what they don't understand.
Is she right? Did God do this to me? Tell me.
And that's where he then goes into the barn and shows him where he came from and you know, spills the beans, for lack of a better term, right?
Right.
But here's the thing that Donald and I want to make sure everybody's getting out of this. It's the same message, folks. Different circumstances, same message. This thing you just did is not as big as why you're here. He said this is bigger than you and the lives of those around you. This is those 20 kids on the bus. You can save 20 million. And you're going to have to pick, because you see that little reaction in the house? Okay, exponentially blow that out through the water when we, get to, everyone knows who you are and where you are, right?
Right, and having to save everyone on the planet, right? I mean, you can't just, you're not in training wheels right now. You're actually, you could blow the whole thing right now. I mean, I don't know what would happen with a kid all of a sudden, a super kid running around, what the world would react like, but it wouldn't be be pleasant.
No, I totally agree. And I see this, and I just don't think people understand. I hope the audio on that was loud enough in the recording. Different clips we get have different audio levels, so hopefully you're able to hear that okay. I just wanted to make sure that everybody really understands this. This is not, his dad said it. He didn't say it's okay to kill the kids. It's not what he said. He said, I don't know. And you know what the first dad said in 78? He said, I don't know. He said, you were here for a reason. I don't know whose reasons, and he stuttered. And he said, I don't know. I don't know why you're here. I know it's not this. And that's all this guy said. That's all he said. And then he goes and he tells him, no, he spills the beans. You're not from here. And then it's a really touching scene about the burden of, and like you said, that Christ, like the burden of being that guy. And he's like, I don't want to be. Can I just pretend I'm your son? And he's like, well, you are my son, but you're also this.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, you have to be both. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but and so it's taking the same message, like you say, but it's ratcheting it up, because it's comparing the lives of 20 kids to what he's going to do to save the whole world, as opposed to just showing off, right? It's a really easy moral lesson to, okay, don't show off, instead save yourself for later, as opposed to what this is saying, which is no, 20 kids is nothing compared to what you really are here for. And that's where we're at.
Here's the other thing. Where this flashback happens in the movie is when Lois is trying to find him. And the reason that they show this is that later here, Lois says, the only way you're going to keep a low profile is you stop saving people, and I don't think that's an option for you. This is why. You watched what forged him and what's making him save people at the oil derrick and not beat the shit out of the guy in the restaurant. And you're watching why. Because he lived through this, and he just can't not save people. And you watched why. He can't let his friends die. And then later, obviously, she goes to Smallville and tracks down Pete, who helps say, yeah, that guy's, this is where his mom lives and what have you. So that's important too. Let's get into the next thing people say. So, or the next piece of this that I think is important to discuss. It's that the DC characters are forced to make horrible choices. and to forge who they are. We are actually going to play this scene, but I think what's important here is this was controversial. A lot of people said that Superman doesn't kill people. Well, that's not true. He's killed people before. But this is where Clark forms his moral compass on the screen. In fact, let me read this. Before we watch this scene, I want to read this quote to you, Donald, from Henry Cavill, and I want to get your reaction to it. So,
great.
Had he been allowed to do Man of Steel 2, Henry Cavill said, quote, "The killing of Zod would have led to the wonderful reason why Superman never kills. Not he never kills just because his dad said one day. He made the decision himself because of an impossible scenario to which he said, I don't care if it's impossible again. I'm going to find a way to make the possible in the impossible. We didn't get the opportunity to show the other side of it, and I'm ready to be Superman now, and I want the rest to show the world the best examples. That's where the joy and the glee and that sense of warmth from the character comes from, which is his real superpower, that he makes people believe in themselves. It was a shame because it would have been nice, and it would have been a very lovely coupling with the seriousness and the depth of Man of Steel." So now that you hear that, again, origin story, correct? Not a destination. It's a starting line.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got to mature past this point.
Right. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and show the scene, because I thought this was one of the best scenes in the film, and I'll shut up. Here we go.
If you love these people so much, you can mourn for them. Don't do this! Stop! Never.
All right, so there's a really cool acting choice that Henry made in that moment. Right before he breaks his neck, he shuts his eyes and he winces. You watch it's Martin Scorsese, we've talked about, does a great job of letting his characters think on screen without words. And the fact that Zach had that camera right on Henry's face when the decision was made was masterful, because you watch the decision made in his face, and the look on his face was, I can't believe I have to make this decision. He winces, he squints, and he braces himself for what he's about to do. Not strength-wise. It's emotional, and he can't stand it. And if that guttural scream when it's all over doesn't tell you how much he didn't want to have to do that, then I don't know what movie you're watching.
Right.
So yeah, it's the moment that makes him decide he will do anything to make sure he doesn't have to make that choice again. It's not that he wouldn't. I mean, you got to do, but does that make any sense?
Yeah, and this Superman can't roll back the clock and you know, do a do-over, right? Like past Superman was able to do. So he's got to live with this and learn from it, and like I say, rise above it. It's a great choice, and it's a starting point. That's the whole point of what we're talking about here.
100%. So here's the cool part. There are other great moments in here, and I just want to touch on some of them, because I could go on and on about Man of Steel for hours and hours. I've always loved the fact that Superman's adopted. I've always felt that was such an awesome and amazing thing to do. I mean, my God, almost 100 years ago that decision was made. And to have kids who see him fight, because here's the cool part. And if you can't see the screen, it's audio only, we've got a picture of the moment that Zod threatened his mother. He does not unleash his powers until Mom's threatened. And then he's, oh no. and that you think you can threaten my mother, beating him into the ground. I cheered in the theater. What is more human than protecting mom? Like, I don't think there's anybody listening to this that if anybody, even if you have a sour relationship with your mom, if someone threatened your mom, what you wouldn't do. Does that make any sense? And then the fact that it's his adopted mother, not birth mother, means a lot to me. And I just love that aspect.
Very cool. And then later in the same sequence, he's saving the soldiers in Smallville, right?
Absolutely. So he's saving the soldiers. There's that whole "this man is not our enemy" moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is after they were opening fire on all of them, including him, right? So.
That's right. And he said, what about the guy in blue? I said all targets. And they just, they're all getting shot at. And then obviously he saves the soldiers. And then the colonel says, "This man is not our enemy." And that's
a great
really
moment.
Important, because Alfred in Batman vs Superman says, "This man is not our enemy." It is a theme of these films. We already talked about Perry saving Jenny. We'll talk about this a little bit. The ending, I think's overlooked a little bit with him arriving at the Daily Planet.
Oh, it's adorable. Just
that's a word, I guess.
It's very cute. It reminded me of a lot of the Daily Planet scenes, with Clark and Lois back in the Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder days, and it's just cute. That, right. Where she says, "Welcome to the planet."
Welcome to the planet. Yeah, and he kind of smirks. Right. So good. I loved the Krypton had its chance moment, because what was cool about it was that Zod doesn't have his powers yet. He hasn't mastered them. He's still in his spacesuit, basically. He can't stop Clark. Whatever Clark's going to do, he can't stop him. And he says, if you destroy the ship, you destroy Krypton. And he makes his choice. He's going to pick humanity over Krypton in that moment. Now, he has to obviously kill Zod later, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then obviously the end fight, watching Zod figure his powers out in the middle of the fight, it keeps ramping up. He starts on the ground, and then Clark's flying, and he runs up a building and then figures out how to fly. And every moment he gets a new power. I just liked that. It was fantastic. But there's another part, Donald, and if you want to speak to this a little bit, and that's Hans Zimmer's score.
Oh man, I mean, it's we can't replace John Williams' score from, and so they didn't try. They got Hans Zimmer, who was smart enough to do his own thing, and the S is not an S; it stands for hope, and that's what this theme. That's repeated in the score over and over really speaks to me, I think. So do we want to play it?
Yeah, we'll play it. This is about 60 seconds, but if you're watching the video, I hope you're able to. This is a live performance that Hans Zimmer did overseas with every bit of instrumentation around him. Choir, he had everything. So this is the Man of Steel theme. It shows up twice in the soundtrack. The first one is I think a track called Flight. And then there's another one where it shows up in. But let's play this. This is the Man of Steel theme, which when I first heard it, Donald, I was underwhelmed. I wouldn't say underwhelmed. Just John Williams is on a mountain of his own, and I had they just ripped off his soundtrack, I'd have been good with it.
Well, it's not what I would call melodic. It is a sort of an ambient sort of a sound, in my opinion. But when you hear it, you feel better.
No, it does. It makes you feel like you can run through a wall when this is done. But if you can watch the video of this performed live with the electric guitars and the just mountains of drum kits, and anyway,
awesome.
watch. It's pretty awesome. Let's take a look and let's take a listen. That stage is crazy.
Yeah.
That stage is crazy, man.
I haven't seen that many people on a stage since the MC Hammer concert, but anyway.
Oh, man. I was there. Oh, my God. That's hilarious. Oh, my God. I will say, I love when rock and scores and orchestral music combine, and I get a huge kick out of it. And I'm just thrilled that I got to see that performance. The entire concert of his entire soundtrack, he did a whole concert of the whole soundtrack. If you want some good background music or something on TV while you're working, while you're working from home during all the fun, it's not the worst thing that you can put on your screen, for sure. But anyway, all good. Let's get into the next movie, Donald. Batman and Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is the film that really started the backlash. This is the one that caused Warner Brothers to course correct. This is the one that caused the narratives to be spun. I didn't hear this stuff until this movie came out. I didn't hear Man of Steel's Too Dark until this movie came out. Now, I'm not saying those things weren't there, but this is the one that got everybody spun up around the axle. This started it.
Yeah, and you know, the vitriol was starting with just and ridiculing Ben Affleck as being the selection for Batman. So it that didn't help. People went in with expectations that they weren't going to like it because it's not my Batman, right?
Right. No, you're right. Every Batman actor ever been cast has been drugged through the mud. So,
that's right.
Anyway,
it's kind of a rite of passage.
It kind of is, right? Even Pattinson's getting it now. Before we get into the Batman, but anyway. All right. So the big thing about Batman and Superman, it's so dark. Why did you make it so dark? All right. Besides the things we've already said, I want to talk about the other two reasons why it's dark. The reason that Ben Affleck came out and said why he's been doing press for The Way Back. And he said what drew him to this Batman was that they were going to do a Batman you've never seen. An older, beaten down, lost his way Batman. And then how he finds his way again, Ben felt was a lot more interesting than, oh, look, Batman. You know, here's the Michael Keaton version again. Here's the Christian Bale version again, right?
Right.
And I think the other, so, remember that the Joke's on You Batman, the Robin suit with the spray paint on it, which is obviously supposed to be Jason Todd, as Joker killed him. That's not, I was hopeful that was planting a seed, for a Red Hood, and I still hope it happens, movie, but no, you're seeing what broke him. You're seeing the things that broke him. In fact, he says, 20 years in Gotham, Alfred, what have we learned? Or, whatever, I can't remember how many years, but he's, no one stays good. He is just a beaten man. And I don't know why he's not allowed to grow past that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can think of for some folks is that they expected it to either be a continuation of the character from, the 80s and 90s movies, or they expected it to be a continuation somehow from the Christopher Nolan trilogy. And there's no way for that to have happened. I mean, not really, not if you're paying attention to the ending of The Dark Knight Rises. And a lot of folks wouldn't have wanted, after Batman and Robin, a continuation of that character. So they had to do something different.
Right. And the other thing is, this is meant to be a middle chapter. This is informing how the characters get to be who they are. This is not saying this is who they are. Okay. This is how they get there. So we'll be like, oh my God, I don't recognize my Batman. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about that a lot. But my point is, yes, that was the point. That was the whole point. He's broken. He's not the one you remember. Because we've done those origin stories. We've done 2 of them already. Like, we don't need to do this again. It's retread. So I agree with the decision to go in a different direction. And the irony is, Donald, you were right. The Batfleck was the crap leading for 2 years into the movie. And then when the movie came out, and started, Ben Affleck was probably the best part of the movie. He was really good. Right. Good Lord. Oh, my God. Anyway, it just drives me crazy. But there's a reason it was dark, folks. And it was to get the characters where they needed to go, So you could watch it happen. This is the DCEU Civil War. It just happened earlier in the continuity. So anyway, here's the other thing. This is based on two of the biggest selling, most popular comics in the history of DC. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and The Death of Superman. So when DC's like, gee, what should we make our movie about? Oh, I know. Let's go grab the most popular damn books we ever had. and so I understand. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh no, even I had gotten The Death of Superman trade when it came out.
Right. And here's the other thing. These aren't happy stories, folks. They're just not. They're horrible in a lot of ways. You know, Marvel films again are all based on these second-tier properties. You know, X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, all those that they didn't have. Those are good books and held in high regard, but they're not iconic books. These books are iconic. These two books on the screen are iconic. And they are celebrated for not being warm and fuzzy. So they put them on the screen. There was like, oh, they're not warm and fuzzy. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. I'm really well aware. Anyway.
Yeah, that Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller, that basically is the sea change. I mean, that caused, that was so influential in comic books in general, but Batman especially, that, that's the reason why we ended up with the Dark Knight trilogy in some respects, and just this darker, shadowy, character of Batman. So it's in that darker tone. It's definitely, we're not in the 60s na anymore.
That's a good one.
You like the dramatic reading there?
Oh, I totally did. Yeah. All right, man. So enough on that one. Here's the next thing that everyone says. Batman kills people and uses guns. Okay. There's a few. Yes, he does. Now, there's another thing. There's two things I want to say before I put up the stuff on the slides, okay? There's one. First, Batman is killed 15 different times in the comics. And the other scene of the guns, Donald, it's a flashback. It's not the scene where he uses the guns the most is what they call the nightmare sequence, when it looks like it's the world after Darkseid has taken over the world, and it's the Superman people versus the Batman people, and we can get into all that stuff, but you know what I'm trying to say? It's not real. It's not a future that's happened. We're not there yet. Maybe we'll get there. But we're not there yet. So I guess what I'd say is he used guns. There's another time, the only other time he really used guns in here, he does with the Batmobile, and a couple cars explode, which I guess you could say they had a bad day. And to that, I would say, yeah, he's lost his way here, guys. He is compromising himself. In fact, we're going to talk about the Batman brand in a minute when we talk about the things that the extended version explains. But the biggest one that's here is this. He's using this gun here on this guy as Martha. We just saw it. We saw the scene, right?
Right.
But again, that nightmare sequence is just a possible future if nothing changes. But this is one of the worst moments that everybody hates. Bruce would never do this. He'd never. Oh my God, he shot that gun. He killed me. Yeah, really? Because it's right out of the frickin' comic. Literally, here's the panels. He literally did this thing from The Dark Knight Returns. Now, so DC leaned into some of the most popular panels they have ever written to do this. And I know comic book fans call them normies, people who don't read comics but just go to the movies. And in this version, as you can see on the screen, if you can see it, if it's audio only, it's a kid. He's holding a baby in front of him, this bad guy. And he says, "Back off, man. I'll kill the kid. Believe me, I will. Believe me." And he shoots him with the exact same gun and says, "I believe you." Well, does that look familiar from the scene we just saw? Now, here's the difference. In this, he shoots the guy in the head. And in that, he just shoots the fuel tank. In other words, had you not brought that toy to the party, you'd have been fine. In other words, it's like an indirect death. Now, again, two things. He's lost his way, but two, he's got to save Superman's mother. Like, you got to do it. So I don't have any trouble with this. I didn't. Do you have any trouble with the violence that Batman enacted during the film?
Not after realizing, that he is like, Batman was never about he never kills anyone to me. It wasn't surprising at all. You know, I was actually more surprised to hear out of the criticism of this that, hey, Batman doesn't kill anyone. I never, you know, of course you wouldn't want to try to, or, you know, you're not doing it willy-nilly. He's not a mass murderer, but at the same time, if you're you know, in self-defense, any of the other, you know, protecting someone, then why wouldn't you go ahead? It's the same sort of principle. And so it's actually, I mean, maybe it's because I'm not a huge Batman fan, so it wasn't a huge shock to me that, you know, he had killed anyone at all ever. But it's, yeah, I didn't have any problem with it at all. I thought, and this scene especially was just freaking awesome. So
I agree. So there's another part that people kind of forget, or I don't know if they forget, but they hand waved out of spite. The extended cut of Batman versus Superman, the rated R extended cut. I don't really know if it needed an R rating.
Nah, it didn't.
Okay, so here's the deal. It's a half an hour more movie. Everyone I've seen goes, it's just a half an hour crap you don't need. Oh, is it now?
I mean, in other movies, the extended cut is probably, for the most part, half hour crap you don't need.
Right.
This one is almost required.
I agree. And here's some highlights of what you see if you watch the extended cut. They explain a lot of things, and a lot of things in better ways. The first, you see Jimmy Olsen works for the CIA as a photographer, a fake photographer. And you see very clearly how they're setting up Superman. Lex Luthor hired those private contractors. There is a missile that is fired from a drone to blow up the whole area that they knew Superman would take out. And then he has contractors on the ground gun everybody down and make it look like Superman caused the destruction. Then he even pays off a woman later to basically say he killed my family, and he didn't. So from the jump, Luthor's pulling every string. That's really what the 30 minutes really does, Donald, is it explains how Luthor is really making this all happen. It's pretty vague if you watch the theatrical cut. The other thing is, how does Darkseid and Steppenwolf even know about Earth? There's a scene in there about Lex is in the chamber and just screwing around with stuff he doesn't understand, and accidentally kind of communes and finds Steppenwolf out in the cosmos and the mother boxes and the whole deal. But you also find out a lot of that. Why does Clark want to stop Batman, and why does Bruce think that Superman needs to die? There is a lot more exposition of the strings that Luthor's pulling to try to get the two mad at each other. And here's the thing. Superman doesn't think Bruce needs to die. He just thinks he needs to be stopped. Now Bruce thinks that Superman needs to die, and there's that scene from the trailer everybody knows. If there's even a 1% chance he's our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute. That's the broken Bruce talking. That's I underestimated the Joker. He killed Robin. This is all this haunting him, right? This is what this is, right? So there's other stuff. Like I said, there's that woman that got paid off. There's the inmates. You can see some of the stuff on the screen here. You remember how if you get the Batman brand, so that's the part where Batman's doing a little above and beyond normal superhero shit, branding people as criminals like a scarlet letter A, right?
Right.
With the Batman symbol.
Right.
Well, that's where he's going too far. They imply that it gets you killed in prison and he knows it. No, he doesn't know it. All that's happening is Luthor's paying off prison inmates to kill people with the Batman brand, so it gets reported out that that's what's going on. He's making Bruce seem out to be worse than he is and Superman out to be worse than he is because he needs Superman out of the way, and he feels like the only guy that can get that done is Batman. So, guys, if you haven't seen the extended edition, do not go into this thinking it's 30 minutes of crap. It's not. It's important, and I got to be honest, since I saw the theatrical version when it came out on Blu-ray originally, and then I never saw it again. I've only seen the extended cut since, and I'm glad, because all these pictures you see on your screen are in there, and it's important. Is there anything else on that one that I'm kind of missing? You realize that the wheelchair bomb that was in the Capitol was lined with lead. Luther set that whole thing up too,
which is why Superman couldn't detect it.
Couldn't see it because he said, "I didn't see it, Lo. I didn't see it because I think I was distracted. I wasn't looking for it." No, he rigged it so you couldn't see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you're looking at that, then I do that. The other big one, Lex Luthor. Let's talk about Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. When we said DCEU misunderstood, here's Exhibit A of misunderstood. Okay, first part. He orchestrates every single bit around the crime around the globe to get Superman out of the way. That's pretty typical Lex. Like, he always knew the criminal empire he wanted to do, the one guy that's going to stop him, that's Supes, right? He can outwit some of the others, but he can't outwit Supes. Okay, here, what's the biggest complaint about Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, Donald? What's the biggest one? What's everybody, like, butthurt about?
Oh, gosh. Just that he's neurotic, or that he's...
He's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's nuts. Okay, here it is. He's not crazy. He's pretending to be crazy. He's pretending to be crazy for several reasons. One, he won't be suspected and he won't be believed. And he's not going to serve any real hard time if he gets caught. It's all bullcrap. And so all the times he's not in public, he's acting like a cool, calm Lex Luthor. But when he's in public, like the charity event where Bruce and Clark meet, he's giving the speech and he's stuttering and that's on purpose. The outward persona is a show. He doesn't even show it to the senator. Like, even when they're one-on-one and behind closed doors, he's not even showing that side to the senator. Watch Jesse Eisenberg's performance. He is only crazy in public. And then he's doing it very deliberately. And if nobody believes me, I'll show you. All right. This is the extended cut of Batman going to Lex Luthor in prison when it's the end of the movie. There is a version of this in the theatrical cut, but it is not all of this. So you need to see this. Watch Lex Luthor's reaction, because what's going to happen is Bruce is going to go. Lex starts bragging. Oh, I'm not even fit to stand trial. I'm crazy. And Batman basically tells him, yeah, I know. And I know you're faking it. So I had it arranged that you move to Arkham because that's where you belong. You don't belong in the cushy, psych ward. You belong up there with the criminal masterminds. And his face, I mean, all the color drains out of Eisenberg's face. Just watch him. This is bullshit. This is not real. Now, it goes through the ding, ding, ding where he says, and he's coming, and it kind of looks like he's crazy. I don't think so. I think he's pissed. The screaming he does after this, Donald, to me comes off angry, not crazy. And he's losing it a little bit. I mean, he's just found out he's going to Arkham, and he's going to be shacking up with Poison Ivy and other fun people, right? So, but anyway, let's play this because this is proof he's faking it. Here we go.
Whatever you do, wherever you go, I'll be watching you.
Look at us. This is how it all caves in. Civilization on the wane, manners out the window. But who would believe me? I'm insane.
He's faking it.
I'm not even fit to stand trial.
That's right. We have hospitals to treat the mentally ill with compassion. But that's not where you're going. I arranged for you to get transferred to Arkham Asylum in Gotham. I still have some friends there. They're expecting you.
He thinks it's funny till then.
Mm-hmm. But the bell's already been rung. And they've heard it. Out in the dark, among the stars. Mm-hmm. Ding dong. The god is dead.
He doesn't brand him, he's changed. Earlier in the film, he'd have done it.
Yeah.
He's hungry. He's found us. And he's coming!
He's trying to tell him you got more problems than me, man.
Yeah.
You need me out of here. You got bigger problems than me. You need to not worry about me. So I take that, Donald, to be anger. He's laughing about it. He's like, I'm too, you know, oh, this is how it all starts. He is laughing.
Yeah.
He is making a joke of it until Bruce goes, yeah, you're going to Arkham. And now he's mad. And he goes, yeah, but the bell's not been rung. He immediately switches to, oh, you're worried about me. You need to not be worried about me because I just killed Superman. We made sure he's gone and you got bigger problems coming because they know where we are now. And so again, you're not understanding what Jesse Eisenberg was doing, because in the epilogue of Justice League, when he's getting together Deathstroke and says, shouldn't we have a league of our own? That's not a crazy guy.
No, not at all.
It's pretty deliberate. So, all right, Donald, I think it's time to do it. I think it's time to do maybe the most hated and ripped on and crapped on moment in the history of the DCEU. Let's talk Martha. You ready to talk Martha?
Yes.
You want to talk some Martha?
Let's talk Martha.
Let's talk Martha. All right, here we go. I think that, I mean, all right, let's do this. Let's just play it first. Everyone knows what this is. Even Kevin Smith's last movie, they made fun of it. Let's just talk. Let's just watch this. It will not be long, and then we're going to analyze it because this is made fun of like crazy. And here's what everybody says, Donald. Oh, their moms have the same name. That's convenient. I guess we won't punch each other anymore. Right? That's the surface layer discussion, correct? All right, we're going to play this. Now I want you to lead us into the next slide. We start talking about the why. Everybody, let's remind ourselves what's going on. Here's Martha.
You were never a god. You were never even a man. You're letting him kill Martha. What does that mean? Why did you say that name? Find him! Save Martha!
You're reminded why that name means something to him.
Why did you say that name? Martha, why did you say that name?
Stop! Please, stop!
Why did you say that name?
It's his mother's name! It's his mother's name.
You're going to watch him change. I'm going to let this play through this quick part here. All right, so Donald, talk about this here real quick, and let's go ahead and I'll cue up the next slide. So this is one of the most misunderstood moments of the DCEU. In fact, people just hand wave it as cheesy and stupid. I will say this. I will say that I think what people have trouble with might be the delivery, because if you say something and then someone goes, "Wait, what'd you say?" Generally, you don't repeat what you just said. You rephrase it. You like you go, "You're letting him kill Martha." Wait, what'd you say? And you go, "You're letting him kill my mom." Like most people change what they said the second time.
There's something a little different, yeah.
Right. So I understand if you want to make an argument to me that it's delivered a little cheesy, I'll buy it. But that's not what's important about the moment and the growth of the characters. So So Donald, here we go. So let's talk about the first bullet. I'll let you go here.
Yeah, I mean, so he's been you know, if we talk about Batman not killing, you know, he's got this rule, and so he has to figure out and reconcile the risk and the, you know, what he feels is his mandate to stop this menace from Krypton, from potentially wrecking his world, because it's already started. As far as he's concerned, he blames him for everything that Zod did and everything, and so it's just a matter of time before Superman ends up destroying the entire world and killing everybody anyway. And so let's figure out how to kill him. But I don't kill people. Well, then I guess I'm going to make him not a person in my mind. You hear him talk about, like, you were never God and you're not even a man.
Yep.
And you know, the entire movie up until that point, from the part where he is saving his or can't save some of his people from the Wayne Tower in Metropolis at basically the end of the events in Man of Steel to this point, he has done nothing but refer to Superman as the alien or the Kryptonian. Nothing like you would talk about an actual person, right? A human. And yes, he's not a human, but at the same time, he's you know, he's from Kansas, right? He born and raised, or not born but raised. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he's if you're going to get yourself to the point where you can feel it necessary to kill someone, you basically, one way to do it is to dehumanize them in your mind. That's what friggin' Nazis did to the people that they were slaughtering. Mm-hmm. It's what you do in war to the enemy. You talk up, you know, how evil the other side is, and that they're monsters, they're beasts. That's what he was doing, basically, saying this is not one of us. This is not something that should be allowed to live.
Right, and he has to dehumanize him to kill him, because in his eyes he has to make sure he's not killing a person, because that's his rule. Correct,
and if he starts to empathize with him, then all of a sudden he's, you know, wait a second, you've got a mother, your mother's name is Martha, and you know, all of a sudden he has empathy and can relate to Clark. And that's the magic, really. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, and the other piece of it is he couldn't save his. He was too young. He didn't have powers. He didn't have these abilities. He wasn't trained yet. He can do something about this one. He couldn't do something about that one. Yeah. And then also, I think Lois appearing, holding him like a fiance, a girlfriend would, humanizes him. It all happens. I mean, you watch the footage, it hits him like a ton of bricks. What am I freaking doing? Like, he really realizes I've lost my way. In fact, as he's flying away to go try to stop Martha from getting killed, Alfred, he says to Alfred, "I don't deserve you, Alfred." And he said, "No, you don't." Because Alfred was trying to tell him the whole time, man, you have lost your way. In fact, there's a moment in the extended edition where he says, "And so ends the Wayne Empire," or something. Like, he's like, it's done. This guy's just too far gone. Well, Donald, there's a bigger payoff to this that happens in the next movie. We're going to talk about Justice League in a second, but our segue is going to be, so what does this character growth mean to Clark? Well, let's watch.
But that's not... Those are very big guns. You've got a team here.
Superman can bring this team together better than I ever could. His strength
doesn't matter how strong you are or what abilities you might have.
He's more human than I am. He lived in this world. Fell in love, got a job. Despite all that power, the world needs Superman. Team needs Clark.
Well, there it is. Like, he did things I didn't do. I never fell in love. I never got married. I didn't do any of this. I certainly haven't had a job.
Not a job. No.
He's more human than I am. I lost my way. He didn't. And he could lead this team better than me. The Justice League needs to be led by Superman, not me. That's his character growth. That's it. This is his version of putting on an Iron Man suit that's not going to save him. And we're going to talk about that. But you got to let the characters get there. You got to let them get there. That's my real frustration, is they're kind of not allowed to get there. Everyone, I just don't recognize these guys. Well, God, give them a minute, man. Anyway, there's your payoff of what Martha means. That's why Martha was important. You can talk to me about how it's delivered. It's fine. It is not crappy. That is not the point. Oh, their moms are the same. I guess we'll quit fighting. You're not paying any attention if that's what you think. So, all right, man. I think it's time to get into Justice League, or as we call it, what happens when too many people complain. No. I mean, it kind of is, right? So, all right, in the middle of this, and this is what's important. Marvel films during this, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, changed people's perceptions of what superhero movies were supposed to be. Okay, from things like this to this. DC didn't change what they were doing, but Marvel came in. And everyone go, oh, I love the Marvel movies. And they started putting out 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, they started putting out, they saturated the market with superhero content. And now everyone's like, well, they shouldn't look like this. They should look like this. Right? And again, this is how you go from Oscar worthy to, it's not what we want. It's a bunch of crap. It's too dark. Blah. This is how you get there, right? Well, here's the thing. During production of Justice League, the studio got spooked. And the reason they got spooked is that 1 week into the Justice League production photography, Batman Superman came out. So Batman and Superman was out for a week or two when production on Justice League started. So the real rumblings hadn't come in yet, but they did start. They came in, it's too dark and all these things we've covered. And here's the other one that everyone bitched about, Donald. They said it was too long.
Yeah, even the theatrical version, the 2.5 hour was too long. Let alone the ultimate cut, right?
Oh, just plotting. Oh my God, it's so long. Oh, and you're gonna add a half an hour to this piece of shit in the middle of the extended. Oh, what are you doing? Well, Donald, why don't you walk through this? It's too long, right? So, the theatrical cut that everyone saw in the theater is 2.5 hours, right? Now, granted. Right. 3 hours is the extended. That's no shit. That's a thing. But here, Donald, a few for you. Age of Ultron's 2.5 hours, basically. It's 8 minutes off. Infinity War is 2.5 hours. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is 2.5 hours. Endgame's 3 hours. So, Donald, why does it matter? I don't understand. I don't understand. Endgame's 3 hours. It's amazing. Batman Superman's too long. It's 2.5 hours long. Crap. I'm sorry.
I mean, there were some people complaining about the length of Endgame, but mainly just because they wanted a pee break in the middle, and that's I get it. I think there's a couple things here, and one thing is. What we've been seeing for these first 3 DCEU movies is that in some respects, they're ahead of their time. Because if they had been coming out now, in parallel with things like Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame, I think we would have seen a lot less criticism of these movies in comparison to what Marvel has kind of led us up to. Right. It's not fair, but I think it is. I think it's happened. So all of the things we talked about, Marvel has gotten to the point where they're fairly comparable in a lot of ways to these first 3 DCEU movies, and people are fine with it. They're great with it, and it's a tragedy that they came out when they did the Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman and Justice League, because at this point I think that people would be the Marvel audience would be ready for this kind of tone, this kind of length, and so on. One thing that I think that for better or worse, I think it would have solved the length complaints in the DCEU is if they'd been patient in rolling out more films. Marvel was rolling out so much so quickly that they could do a 2-hour movie here and 2-hour movie there, and it wouldn't feel chock full of things. But for Batman versus Superman, we had to have both the Batman versus Superman part, and then also the death of Superman, which once Darkseid showed up, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get the death of Superman next movie. No, we got it this movie.
Right.
And so it was a bonus, but nobody was expecting it. And I think that's part of what was going on, is it felt like we had a whole extra chunk there that, as I was a fan of that book, I would have liked to have seen an entire movie of it. It probably would have been a little much, not enough content for a full movie, and that's why they did what they did. But I think that's something. But they also felt like they needed to get to this Justice League, this team up movie, as quickly as possible, because Marvel had already beaten them to the punch a couple times by this point, and they felt like they had to sprint instead of pacing themselves for a marathon. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of what we're seeing in the Justice League, especially.
That's 100%. I would say the one criticism of the DCEU that I would agree, they went too fast toward Justice League. I think we need Man of Steel 2 and Wonder Woman. And the I don't even know if you need the Batman, but you at least need Man of Steel 2 and the Batman. And then we're going to get into this. You better be allowed to give origin stories to your other characters a little bit. And that's the problem with what they did, because they cut a half an hour out of Justice League. Now, let's remember what happened with Justice League, because the movie completely changed. Now, let's talk about the why. It's nobody's fault. Zack Snyder's adopted daughter committed suicide in the middle of production, and he had to leave to go be with his family. And I can't imagine what that is, or like, I just, that's awful. But what happened was, because he took a hiatus from filming and they were basically almost done, they said, let's take an opportunity here and let's bring in Joss Whedon, who I was just ecstatic was going to finish out the film. I mean, I was over the moon, man.
Yeah, I mean, on top of everything else he's done, he did the first two Avengers movies, and I mean, what's not to like, right?
Absolutely. So he comes in, but now it's the edicts that he's getting from Warner Brothers that he has to fix. And as Affleck has talked about it, you have two conflicting directorial styles that aren't just, it's not that Joss hates what Zack was doing. In fact, there's this old story. It was a big story when it happened. Someone tweeted out, like, Steppenwolf's not really a good villain. And Joss Whedon liked the tweet. And everyone's like, oh, see, even he says it sucks. No, that's not why. The whole why was because we got Darkseid was supposed to be the big bad, and now Steppenwolf's the big bad because we hacked off the end of the damn movie. And so they had to reshoot all that crap at the end to make it end with Steppenwolf, not Darkseid. And then we get the mustache and we get all this stuff that happened because of this decision that it's too long and we're going to have to cut the movie. And that's a problem. The other things we didn't get Green Lantern. Like, you saw a little bit of Green Lantern in the little, I don't know, flashback, whatever, about the last time we fought over the mother boxes. Right. And then we didn't get the origin stories. There's a picture on the screen of Flash saving Iris West from she's frozen in midair because he's running. He's saving her from a car crash. And then we didn't get to see Cyborg playing football. We didn't get to see anything. We didn't get to see anything about Darkseid. Steppenwolf, they needed Clark. I think they'd have beat him. I mean, it would have been hard. Like, okay, guys, this is like the Black Order coming to Earth. And then they see Thanos and wave, and he just leaves, like, oh, well, bye, Thanos. You're not going to come, and we're just going to kill the Black Order, and we're done. Like, that's what this is. So I do want to show something here in a minute, Donald, but this changes everything. It was just supposed to be a cliffhanger. Like, oh, you think that was bad? Buckle up, because we're doing Darkseid. And they didn't get to do it at all. Anyway, that's what happens when you say things are too long and you gripe long enough. Anyway, let's do this. For those of you that do not know who Darkseid is, he is the DC's Thanos. He is, well, there's a lot of different Thanoses in Marvel, but the one that they've picked that the normies are familiar with is Thanos. He is the Thanos of the DCEU, of the DC world. And this is a clip from the Justice League War movie, which is the animated, which I can't recommend those movies enough, the basically origin story of the Justice League from the animated universe. But all I have here is about 60 seconds of showing why Darkseid was going to be a big freaking problem. So anyway, just watch this. And you're going to watch the rest of the Justice League. You're going to watch them kind of trying to quip, and you're going to watch Green Lantern pay for it. Anyway, here we go. This is what Darkseid was going to be.
Stand back and peep the light show. Green Lantern's got this.
Something tells me he doesn't. See, they're handling the parademons okay.
Yeah, that works.
That all you got? Not all I got.
He has chucked him.
I'm not through with you.
Broke his arm.
Is that your boyfriend?
No.
Cool. Watch this. Hey, Blackheart the Craft Eater, or whatever your World of Warcraft name is.
That's Shazam. If you're listening to the audio. I wanted to see these Omega beams on real screen.
Now you die.
Wait, no!
Oh, too much destruction.
We're gonna have to move fast.
Not a problem for me.
They're splitting up. They can do that?
They're locked on us.
Come on, Barry. You're moving fast, so think fast.
Anyway, y'all get the idea.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's a problem, and he was supposed to be pretty awesome. So let's get into what the Justice League should have been. First, and you can see it on the screen here. Hopefully you get to see it. Darkseid was going to kill Steppenwolf for failing and go to do it himself. He wasn't just going to, oh, what's that? They smell fear, like all that stuff. That wasn't going to happen. Here is a post and a social media post from Zack Snyder of the picture of them looking through a boom tube. He says, quote, if you can't see it, he says, they don't fight him yet. They have an exchange. They see him with his massive invasion force, aka the whole family, the whole Acropolis family, just on the other side of the boom tube. But then the boom tube collapses because they destroyed the mother boxes, so he can't come through, you know, yet. And that's what it was going to look like. That's what the scene was. And they basically decided they're going to have to take the fight to Darkseid. There's worse things out there. They were going to attack Acropolis. It was going to go to space. Darkseid was going to invade Earth and win. Darkseid was going to cause Superman to fall to the anti-life equation. Basically, that's DC's Infinity Stones. It's like the thing everybody was after. I'll talk about that in a second. Well, here, we'll talk about it now. Okay, the anti-life... There, something in DC, I'll do this really quick. In DC, there is the life equation, which is why all Earth sentient life does what it does. Well, Darkseid figure out if there's a life equation, there's an anti-life equation. And that is, if you use all these dark feelings and things about a person's humanity, any sentient being, that's why it works on Kryptonians. It's not mind control. It's kind of a power of suggestion. It's a way to control people through manipulating them. That's a short version. Well, he was going to kill Lois in the Batcave. So he was going to, basically Clark was going to entrust Lois to Bruce to keep her safe. And, well, what's safer than the Batcave, man? No one knows where the damn thing is. But Darkseid was going to use a boom tube, go into the Batcave, kill Lois Lane, and cause Superman to fall basically to his control. And now you understand what all the flashbacks and the dreams and all that stuff were. They were going to lean into the Injustice storyline, and then Flash was going to have to go back in time to reverse things to give the Justice League a chance. It was going to be the DCEU's version of Flashpoint, which is the comic book that started the New 52. This is all what it was going to be, guys. There's even more to this. There was a cool time travel thing that they'd worked out with Barry. That's why he's wearing a suit and why the mask opens up in the suit and you can see his face, and he doesn't look the same. He's got a beard, and even in that nightmare scene, you see the Omega symbol on the ground. That's Darkseid. The parademons are everywhere. So anyway, Donald, we lost just because you hack off that half hour and because you decide to abandon what Snyder was doing. Look on your screen. Like, this is what we didn't get because everybody's too dark. It's too long. Yeah, I liked Justice League, Donald. You and I liked it a lot. We reviewed it really well. We had a lot of fun watching it. I think it's got a lot going for it. It got well reviewed compared to the others. But I mean, I have more trouble when I learn more what it wasn't than what it was. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and you know, I'm not a huge let's see the Snyder Cut sort of guy, but I do get that this would have gotten me what I wanted, which was you know, more momentum towards Justice League 2 and Man of Steel 2 and all the rest. And I certainly mourn for that. I'm hopeful that we can, you know, we'll talk about the future here, but it is disconcerting to me that they decided, you know, they took the opportunity, the DC, you know, powers that be, they took the opportunity with the director switch to really change direction for the entire franchise at that point, and the movie suffered because of it. I think that's fairly unambiguous.
Yep, I get it. So let's kind of wrap this discussion up with what this all has caused, and I think Donald and I can clearly say there is a real hypocrisy going on with the critics when it comes to DC versus Marvel. We said it at the start, Marvel can't put out a movie, even if like it gets a 50-50 fan score, the critic score is 90%. Like there's nothing they can do that's wrong. They can crap on a plate and film it and everyone's like, it's amazing. And then they just pour over DC stuff with a fine-tooth comb. So I want to let's play a little game here, Donald, if you want to play with me here.
There you go.
All right. So I'm going to give you two quotes. These are critic consensuses coming out of Rotten Tomatoes. One's going to be about a Marvel movie, and one's going to be about a DC movie. So Donald, if you will, for purposes of our audio-only audience, let's play Guess the Movie. Sure. Why don't you read the first synopsis from Rotten Tomatoes, and we're going to do both of them, and then you're going to have to guess which movie they're from. So go ahead. Read this one.
First one is, this movie arrives with its entertainingly ludicrous ride, offering up CGI superhero spectacle that delivers energetic action with an emphasis on good old-fashioned fun.
That doesn't seem too horrific. The movies in question are either Aquaman or Thor Ragnarok. So that quote was either about Thor Ragnarok or Aquaman. All right? So, next one. Read that one.
Exciting, funny, and above all fun, this movie is a colorful adventure that sets a new standard for its franchise and the rest of the fill-in Marvel or DC universe.
Right. So that is either Aquaman or Thor Ragnarok. Here's the answer, and it's subtle, but in a world where the media frames stories instead of simply reporting on things, and while I get it, this is subjective, there's framing involved before you go read the reviews of this movie. There's framing involved. Well, here's your answer. I changed a couple of words so you wouldn't get the gist, but the one about Aquaman is the Aquaman swims with its entertainingly ludicrous tide, offering up CGI superhero spectacle that delivers energetic action with an emphasis on good old-fashioned fun. Thor Ragnarok, exciting, funny, and above all fun, Thor Ragnarok is a colorful cosmic adventure that sets a new standard for its franchise and the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here's the problem with this. There are two digs in that Aquaman one. Ludicrous and CGI. CGI is meant as a dig. Everything's CGI in here. I'm sorry. Anyone see Thor Ragnarok? There's not a damn thing there. I'm sorry. The Hulk's not there. Ever.
Right.
Ever. The whole city's not there. The arena's not there. Nothing's there. But they don't mention CGI in that one. No, no, no. And ludicrous? Okay. If you're mad about armored sharks, okay. There's armored rhinos in Black Panther. Did you care? I don't think you cared. I looked at these two, and Donald, I don't know if you share this. I do. I think these are interchangeable. I think you could put these under either of these films, and it's fine. Because Aquaman kind of did set a new standard for the DCEU. If you don't believe me, Aquaman got a 66% critic score and made 1.15 almost billion. Thor Ragnarok, 93%, made 850 million. And I'm not saying box office makes it a better movie. I'm saying people vote with their dollars and they will tell you what they think of it. And, well, worldwide, people liked Aquaman better with their wallet anyway. You know, that is just true. It is what it is. But one's crapped on and digged and the other's not. And both have just massive amounts of CGI. Both are cracking jokes all the time. But one's part of a universe everybody accepts, and one's the one that everybody's crapping on. So, I don't know. What do you? Are we off here? I'm
no. I mean, it's right there, and you know, if you don't accept that, that's I guess that's fine. But I think you're ignoring what we're saying.
Right. There's other examples of this. There's other examples of this. These came out almost at the same time, like a year apart, and I just thought. Because I think, wasn't Aquaman 2018 and Thor was 2017? I think I'm right.
Something like that,
anyway,
yeah.
They're out a year apart, and trust me, I can read others. Just the Aquaman one was fairly positive, but it had to take a couple of jabs. And anyway, not that the critic consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is the Bible or anything, but
no, but it does reflect the overall narrative and that around a movie, and that certainly is obvious right here.
Absolutely. So Warner Brothers then obviously overreacted to the critical reception of the Snyder films. And we talked about right in the middle of Justice League's production, they switched things around. But here's the other thing. Since then, guys, these haven't been that dark. Everyone says the DCU is dark. Well, we've spent a lot of times defending the Snyder stuff because that's where it all comes from. These movies on this screen are not dark. Birds of Prey is not dark. Shazam is not dark. Aquaman is not dark. Wonder Woman is not dark. Like,
yeah, and Wonder Woman was probably the first one to try. You know, I mean, it came out before Justice League, obviously, and so it was, you know, a different vision. It wasn't Snyder directing. I think he was still producing though, right?
Yeah, so the Snyders, Zack and Deborah Snyder, produced Wonder Woman, worked with Patty Jenkins very closely on the photo, the storyline. Wonder Woman, while it is, Patty Jenkins deserves every bit of love she is getting for that film. The Snyders have their fingerprints all over Wonder Woman, and it wasn't that dark. And again, they weren't going to keep being that dark. It just wasn't going to be that way if they were allowed to continue for whatever reason, but... No, yeah, Snyder's got his fingerprints all over that, and people forget that. Another big thing that happened, Suicide Squad got changed. What people don't remember or realize was, as people started to panic about the reception of these movies, those weird zombie-looking things that the Enchantress sent on everybody, they were supposed to be parademons, guys. It was supposed to be part of the invasion of Darkseid. It was supposed to basically, like, it was supposed to start there and then expand out, and it was supposed to be the start of Steppenwolf looking for the stuff, and the Enchantress takes advantage, and all that stuff. It was supposed to be something else, and it's just interesting on the screen. I've got what those early concept designs were for some of the parademons, because remember, Justice League hasn't happened yet, so the parademons Justice League have not been designed yet. So they were just looking at little different designs, but this is what they were. Anyway, so another bit of hypocrisy here. And we hinted at it through the rest of this, and that was Marvel was allowed to finish its vision before people got critical of the characters. So Donald, the first one here is about the Avengers and their talk about this a little bit, because there was another movie universe in which superheroes beat up on each other and then became friends later.
Right.
Nobody seemed to care.
No, that's right. And they I mean, the whole point was a lot of it was about the quote unquote destruction porn, right? So Captain America: Civil War, you have multiple heroes, not just one-on-one, but multiple heroes on each side. And they're in the marketing. It was Team Cap and Team Iron Man, and in some respects, looking at both sides, you were right. Regardless of which side you were on, they were both right. But yeah, one way or another, it was the same kind of thing. And I mean, we even saw a little bit of the battling and skirmishing in the first Avengers as well.
Yep, that's what the first scene on the screen is. Yep,
and that wasn't a problem, right? So.
Yeah, nobody cared that Thor and Captain America and, maybe it's because he was doing, does your mother know you wear her drapes? Like, maybe it's because he's cracking jokes. Nobody cared. And the Superman one was pretty baked in pretty serious themes. But I don't know. This is not any different than Batman and Superman, folks. And then they come together like this theme is there. There's, I don't understand. This was BVS. No one accepted it. There's another big one. The consequences of superheroes destroying things. We talked about it earlier, but I mean, you have the Battle of New York that led to the Department of Damage Control, which is right out of the comics, and led to Spider-Man Homecoming and all of that. And then all the destruction that they were doing in all the other cities led to the Sokovia Accords, which led to Civil War, which, led to them splitting up, which led to them having to get back together when Thanos arrived. Like, this was all fine. But Justice League wasn't really allowed to do this and complete it. And then Man of Steel 2, as you heard Henry Cavill talking about, these are the themes they were going to explore. Seemed fine there. I guess. And then the last one, we talked about, this is the character development stuff, guys. If you look at the screen, Tony Stark in the first Iron Man movies is a narcissistic, blowhard, womanizing a-hole with a lot of money and a lot of time on his hands. But by the end, his last suit in Endgame, he is not even meant to survive it. He has created a suit that if it's used for the purpose he designed it for, he's going to die. And he saved everybody at the Avengers, and he grew, and then he had to deal with that. Everyone loved watching Tony Stark grow, and everybody was too busy going, not my Superman, not my Batman, to let them do the same. Bruce Wayne, we watched this footage. We saw the scenes. He grew in these exact same ways, and Superman was about to grow big in Man of Steel 2. And I hope, we're going to get into it, we hope the rumors are correct, and maybe we're going to get there. But Donald, I know that Marvel's was a slower burn, and as you said, maybe DC's problem was they sprinted, and they didn't build out the characters as much. But that's the only thing I can see, because the themes are the same.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there? And once again, looking through and watching through all of the 20-something MCU movies, you start getting, and then you go back to these other DCEU movies, you start seeing that as less of a problem. At least I did. You start saying, oh yeah, so the characters are developing. So if you don't like Batman the way he is now, then wait a movie or two. And we've gained that kind of patience as an audience. And DC was not. They either were not allowed by the audience or the critics, or they didn't allow themselves the amount of time to get there yet.
Absolutely. So let's wrap this up. Where's DC going to go from here? Because they abruptly stopped. Like, basically, they were headed down a track, and then Warner Brothers derailed the track because they listen to people and they listen to the complaining. So let's talk about what's going on right now that we know. The first is something Donald said he's not that excited about, but I am. There is a wildly huge outcry for the Snyder version of Justice League, which was basically finished. Jason Momoa even confirmed that almost all the special effects are done. And here's the key. I never really thought this had any legs, because Warner Brothers is not going to admit they made a mistake. And I don't think by releasing it they admit they made a mistake. I think that they just would, I don't know. But they're not going to do it. I didn't think they'd do it. Well, here's the key, Donald. HBO Max is coming, and actually we got news it's coming months earlier. It's coming in May. It wasn't going to arrive till the end of the year, but because of all the craziness going on in the world, they realized that streaming services are going to be at a paramount, and they're going to launch it early. Well, here's the key, Donald. Warner Brothers and HBO are owned by AT&T, which bought Time Warner. So if you want what people are putting two and two together with, and there are rumors that Zack Snyder's getting money to finish it, is you could put it on your streaming service as exclusive content. Then you don't have to release it theatrically to compete with all the other stuff that you're doing or did, but you could still give it to the fans. As far as I'm concerned, they should just re-release it in the movie, pretend the first one didn't happen and go. But, you know, that's me. I don't know. What do you think? Again, we're in strong rumor territory at this point. I see a lot of YouTube videos claiming it's done, it's fact, it's fine. But I've seen those videos for 2 years now. So who knows? But I don't know. What do you think? I would really love to see Steppenwolf be the stepping stone to Darkseid desperately.
Yeah. I'm all for it. I'm not like, you know, I'm not waiting and hoping and wishing like I was for, you know, a sequel to something else. But what I am waiting for is whatever comes, you know, whatever happens here with the Snyder Cut or Justice League, I want more DCEU movies. And so that's the key for me. And so if releasing the Snyder Cut, you know, brings up some additional, you know, fan love, and everybody's clamoring for them to continue with it, then I would consider that a huge win.
Right.
And I would love that.
Right, absolutely. So what do we know is going on? So known DC movies in development. We know Wonder Woman 1984. Please,
Hopefully.
coronavirus, just go away and let us watch Wonder Woman 84. We have The Batman in 2021. So there's only one DC movie this year. But then they're going to start ramping up about 3 a year. So in 2021, we are scheduled to get The Batman, The Suicide Squad, Black Adam.
It's not The Black Adam?
I don't know. And then Shazam 2 is 2022, The Flash 2022, and Aquaman 2 in 2022. So they're going to start, like Marvel wanted to take a little break. Well, DC's going to pick up the pace. And then, and also Henry Cavill is in negotiations to be in Man of Steel 2, maybe, as well as Shazam 2. They wanted a cameo in the first Shazam, but because of his shooting schedule with Mission Impossible, he couldn't do it. But it looks like he's going to be in the next Shazam. Now, other movies that are in various stages of development that have no release dates. The Green Lantern Corps movie, we've heard a lot about. With Jeff Johns writing it. Justice League Dark, there is a cartoon movie, which is where I took this image out of some of the comic imagery. They kind of deal in the dark magic, you know, all that kind of, like, this would basically be Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness like version. This is the dark, kind of gloomy side of the magic kind of universe of DC, if that makes any sense.
You want dark, this would be dark.
Right. New Gods, Ava DuVernay supposedly signed a deal to do the New Gods. Now, the New Gods, Darkseid is one of them, so it'd be very much a cosmic deal. Batgirl, even though Joss Whedon put the ball on the floor and said he didn't have a good story, people are still trying to pick that up. The Trench, now this is supposed to be a backstory of to whatever the hell that thing in Aquaman is, that weird trench, all those weird creatures. It's supposed to explain all of that, so it's kind of an Aquaman world movie. Nightwing is supposedly in some kind of development. This is basically, you know, the first Robin goes on and becomes Nightwing, and then Jason Todd comes in, and anyway, there's different Robins, but the first one goes on to be basically his own version of Batman. And then last, Supergirl is in. They're trying to get in on the big screen. Now, what some people say is that crashed Explorer ship that was, you know, tens of thousands of years in the ice that Superman finds in Man of Steel is Kara Zor-El's ship, or Kara's ship. I don't know. Some people say that is, or that was how they were going to introduce her. Some people don't think that's true. That she's frozen in ice like Captain America, but she's alive because our atmosphere and the sun and everything around is keeping her alive, and she's going to wake up, kind of like a la Captain America kind of thing. I don't know. That's all rumored bullcrap at this point. But Anyway, that's what we know. Donald, I'm with you. I just want new content, a lot of DCU, because I don't think they're getting a fair shake. And I guess, Donald, that's the last thing I guess we want to say. And that is, if you've got these narratives in your head, it's too dark, it's too this, it's not my Batman, and blah, blah, blah. If you've been saying this for years, I mean, I would highly recommend you go give them another watch. And throw your expectations out the window. Just watch with fresh eyes. Watch that Martha moment. Watch Batman. Do things like watch Batman and Superman and listen to every time Bruce talks about Superman. He is derogatory, and he is using words like the Kryptonian, the alien, and all those things. I would suggest that, not that you need to like it just because we said we did, or if you don't like it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we just changed your mind or anything. I just feel like people aren't giving it the due it deserves because they didn't like one aspect, so they threw all the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know. Anyway, so Donald, do you feel like, I just think there's hypocrisy here. I think it's pretty clear. I'm not trying to say people got to love it, but you know.
Yeah, so I agree, Scott. And what I would say is, start, if you're introducing your kids to these, and maybe you're beholden to that, then you probably need to wait till they're a little bit older for this first three, because they are a little more sophisticated. They are dark, but they're not needlessly dark. They're appropriately dark. And they come out of it, and we've seen them already come out of it, and we hope to continue to see a lighter, I don't know, kinder, friendlier Superman and Batman, but not super Boy Scouty, but at least something probably a little closer to what those of us that are grew up on Christopher Reeve are going to be able to recognize, because they have been developing that direction all along. And so we love the direction that it's going, and we hope that they continue to make it happen.